Ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update on the current state of the Democratic Party, and it is not very good. CNN releasing a new poll talking about the current standing when it comes to the Republicans and Democrats, whose party has strong leaders, party that gets things done. You can see party with strong leaders, Democrats at 16%. And so it just illustrates the overall bigger point that we've seen ever since the Trump victory in November, where he won every single swing state, he won the popular vote. There has been a complete lack of true leadership and identity within the Democratic Party. That's led to me and other people saying, well, the Democrats, they really don't have their candidate for 2028. You could maybe say Buttigieg or AOC or Kamala. They're all placeholders for someone that could come out of nowhere. Maybe they're within Congress. We just don't know they're going to run right now. 16% strong leaders, Republicans that are at around 40%. There is going to be a galvanization behind Trump and like a justification for, well, he's the strong leader, so we're going to rate the Republicans higher. He just won the election. There's a lot of MAGA support, a big base for Trump. And this also shows, well, if the Republicans, they're the ones that won, they're going to probably grade out better in a poll like this. Party that gets things done, Republicans at 36%, Dems at 19%. I mean, the Republican-led Congress has done very little. And there's been a lot of vacations. It seems like every 3 days, it's like they're taking a week off now. I see it announced like every other week when it comes to Congress. They're not going to be meeting until next week. How many times do you hear that? And Trump signs all these executive orders, but very little actually gets codified and gets done. So we'll have to see that party of extremism. I think that's what that is. What is that? Republican Party at 41%, Dem at 30%. Party of change. All right, some of those are just dumb, but the overall point here is that the Dems still don't have a leader. Does it matter right now? I mean, you'd like to have a front to go against Trump instead of having these people like Crockett and AOC. You'd like to be galvanized. They really don't have that, but it doesn't matter a ton because it is an off year and we're still well over a year before the midterms and over 3 years really before the start of the 2028 campaign. And so we'll see what happens with the Democrats, but it just goes to show you at this point, there's really nothing coming from that party. And I know people keep saying it, but it is true. You've got Scott Bessent talking about the state of the economy right now, saying that, you know what, I'm going to play this. The thing is I just talk and I try and speculate on what so let me just play it.
We wanted to make sure that there aren't price increases, Margaret, and thus far there have been no price increases. Everything has been alarmist. That the inflation numbers are actually dropping. We saw the first drop of inflation in 4 years. The inflation numbers last week, they were very pro-consumer.
Right. But you listen to earnings calls just like we do. Mm-hmm. You know what Walmart's saying, what Best Buy's saying. And
well, yes, it's like these people don't understand. There's always a trade-off. You're not just going to generate all this money without a little bit of pushback. The idea is we can, and I'm not, I'm going to calm down. But what I'm saying is these people, they're like, well, the prices are going up. Well, listen, they're getting things for extremely cheap in China. We're trying to self-correct this by not going completely off the rails. Trump has been able to coax it to where there's a happy medium to where we can generate money through the tariffs, but we're not hurting the domestic consumer base by having the prices raised too much. That's why he had a phone call with Bezos and Amazon. That's why he talked to Walmart and threatened them and said, you better not raise prices. Yes, the tariffs, if you slap 145% tariff or a 30% tariff, there's going to be a reaction. It's not like we can just generate money out of thin air. It's like these people don't understand the concept of, we understand there's a positive and a negative. We're trying to tilt the levers to make it to where there's a happy medium to where we don't have the inflation. Just like Bessent is saying, we don't have the inflation, but we have the revenue and we have more domestic production. And doesn't it seem like that's exactly what's happening? He references the inflation, the core inflation, it's down again. When you look at the reading every single month, 2 out of 3 months Trump's been in, it's been lower than expected. It was 2.4%. I saw a rumor it was around 2.1 in the recent data that came out on Friday. But the point is, there has to be some type of equilibrium we reach to where originally it seemed like Trump was going to go a lot more hardcore. He's brought it back a bit. And so now it's like, well, is it not working out well to where we just generated $23 billion in the month of May alone? We're on track to do $300-400 billion in tariff revenue. We've got very little inflation increase. Then they're like, oh, there's a lag. Really? There's a lag on what? 30% inflation, 30% tariff on China? That's going to really drive inflation up crazy. I mean, there might be a few price increases. Yes, companies got things for very cheap in China. That's been cut off, or it's been limited because now they have to pay a tariff to the US government to be able to import that stuff because we want those companies to make them in the United States. So there is going to be a reaction there. We want the companies to eat it, or if there is a slight price increase, we would hope capitalism would work in a way to where there'd be another up and coming company. That's where the competition comes in and they undercut their prices if the one company decides to raise it because they get it from overseas and the tariff is affecting their bottom line. It's like they don't understand the concept of the levers of economics. Yes, there's going to be a negative reaction when you put tariffs on. It's not just free money. But what Trump is doing is he's leveling it because we have such a massive consumer base and there's so much competition in the United States because of capitalism. We have, not in every sector, there is a lot of monopolies, but we have it to where we've got the tariffs on, we're making 20 billion, 25 billion a month, and we don't have an inflation increase. Now, certain sectors and certain products might have gone up slightly in price because we're tariffing countries, or we're tariffing the United States and it's affecting imports from other countries. But where is like I was talking to someone, these people, they're like, oh, but you know that the concept of tariffs and how it's hurting the US consumer. There's no inflation increase at all. And why would there be? Now it's a 10% flat tariff. Is that really going to be inflationary? So I don't know these people. They're just like, and someone's like, oh, I listened to earnings calls. Yeah, they're going to cry about it. They were getting things for extremely cheap with slave labor in China. You're right. Like, this is just how it has to be. We're trying to onshore production, and we're going to do it a lot. That's why the tariff revenue is going to eventually go down. I agree with people. It is going to go down, but that's the point. That's how tariffs are supposed to work. It's more domestic production. And we're not saying we don't need to trade with countries. Why do you think we did a trade deal with the UK? And we kept 10% tariffs on certain sectors. And now their cope is, oh, that was a bad trade deal. Really? How was that a bad trade deal? They took off a lot of their VATs, a lot of their things that made our products in their markets less competitive. We still have a 10% tariff on them that will generate us around $7 to $10 billion a year just in trade with the UK. So I don't understand how that's bad. How's that a bad trade deal? So they're making stuff up and then they just say, well, it's inflationary. It causes inflation. It really hasn't. And they've already tamed the tariff. That's why the federal court ruling was so egregious. It makes no sense to it's like retroactively ruling on something that's already over. So you're talking about the Liberation Day tariff and how crazy they are. Well, shouldn't there have been an emergency action from Congress if they deemed Trump had executive overreach? Shouldn't that's what should have happened, and there was nothing. So now we have the timeline. Now we have negotiations with countries to where we're trying to get better trade deals. Let's see what the negotiations do. We were told by the administration there were going to be better deals. It hasn't happened yet. We're going to see. We got one with the UK. We're waiting, though. They said this next 2 weeks, and that was last Sunday. There hasn't been a single trade deal since they said that. So we're waiting. But the idea that this federal court would deem it like you're not allowed to implement these tariffs in a way, Trump used an emergency act to do it because of the deficit and how catastrophic it is and the debt. It's all terrible. But the administration now is coming back and saying, well, we're not even going to, and this is the thing with the whole idea with the deficit, when they talk about Trump adding to the debt, are they factoring in around anywhere from $250 to $400 billion in tariff revenue? Are they factoring any of that in? Pretty much all of which seemingly does not affect inflation. The inflation is down. Even if you want to say there's a lag and a delay effect to it, the delay would be based off of a 10% flat rate in terms of the global imports and then a 35% rate on China. That's going to cause serious inflation in the United States. I highly doubt it. It's not going to. So they're just lying. And then they say, well, you know what? Yes, we understand that these corporations, when they get the slave labor, it's very cheap to make. We get it. They're going to cry about it. But there's going to have to be, you can't generate $400 billion out of complete thin air. There's going to be a slight trade-off, but it honestly seems like Trump is generating $400 billion almost out of thin air. I'm not even kidding, because factor it. Think about it. you're talking about the tariffs generating 350, $400 billion. We have no inflation increase. Now, maybe certain prices in certain sectors, but overall, and we've seen the energy sector decrease. The original cope was it's a recession because the energy prices are going down. It's not what happened at all. Now we've got the Atlanta Fed with a 3.8% GDP growth. They're probably lowballing it. It's probably around 4%. This is historic to see what Trump has done, where he's implemented these tariffs. The inflation stays down. The GDP goes up. The consumer confidence is sky high. The real wages are up. So everything is up now. And they're still coping like, oh, these increases are happening. And Basen's like, no, they're not. Where is it? The inflation is down. And that's the thing that I was saying for months. And they originally tried to say, well, it's a lag, it's a delay, it's going to affect it. But then the Liberation Day tariffs get paused for 90 days. And it's like, well, if inflation, it's the end of April. Now it's the end of May. Now it's the beginning of June. Where is the inflation? We're not seeing it. I mean, sure, we saw Trueflation go from 1.6 to 2%, but it's at 2.05 right now. That's way under what it was back. You know, when Trump entered, it was higher inflation, it's high interest rates. We still have the high interest rates, we've got lower inflation. And now we've got revenue generation through tariffs to help pay down the debt. What was the Biden administration doing about, oh, they signed the infrastructure deal. Then they try and take credit for you see what they do now with these dumb liberals. They say, well, it's because of the infrastructure and the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act, which gave subsidies, that's the reason why the Taiwanese are investing into the United States with their huge semiconductor company. No, it's because Trump threatened them with tariffs. You have to understand, you can put out an initiative that says we're going to give foreign companies subsidies to build in the United States and domestically build in the US, but it still costs a lot more to produce semiconductors in the United States. So you have to threaten them. Trump immediately threatens them with a massive tariff on semiconductors. They have no tariff on semiconductors right now because they agreed to pay billions and billions of dollars, and then the Biden administration and these liberals try and take credit and say it's because of the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act was a disaster. There wasn't even $1 billion invested into the United States to produce semiconductor chips until Trump came along and threatened a tariff. That's why, because you have to threaten tariffs or tariff countries to produce results, immediate results. That's the point. It's like the thing with the EU. They don't want to negotiate with Trump. They're not taking off the VATs or the currency devaluation. All right, we're just going to threaten a 50% tariff on them starting June 1st. Oh, now they want to negotiate. Okay. And so that's how it's done. But then they try and take credit. It's like, oh, it's the CHIPS Act. Well, then why was there nothing invested after the CHIPS Act got passed for years? Why was there no onshore semiconductor production? Why was there no commitment from the Taiwanese semiconductor company to invest in the United States domestically? These people are lying about the CHIPS Act. It did not have a positive. This is Trump threatening tariffs against these countries and enforcing action. That's really what this is. And so see how they lie about it and try and have Biden. They're still trying to say Biden's like a top 20 president. You know, Biden came out and said, I mean, the guy can barely talk. This is how he was the entire presidency. But he's like, oh, they rated me as a top 20 president of all time. And it's like, number one, any historian worth a damn is not going to be ranking a president a year out of office or 12 months, 6 months out of office, whatever it is. There's a waiting period. You have to wait 5 to 10 years minimum. Some historians won't even rank Obama yet. Obviously, Trump had the first term. Now it's his second term. You can't rank him. But it's like, oh, they rated Trump last. They ranked me first. This is like the high school historian, liberal people who just, they rank Biden. The guy can't complete a sentence. Shouldn't that be a qualification to rank a president in terms of, well, if you can't complete a sentence, you probably, like, that's the thing that I always say about Biden, because he can't. There's always stuttering. Remember, they started saying, oh, he has this stutter that he developed, but he's just so cognitively declined, he can barely talk. And now he's citing these just fake liberal professors who are like, he's a top 10 president ever, top 15 president. Who is ranking Biden? Well, I mean, Biden's probably a different story to where you can rank him just because it was so catastrophic, but it's almost like tough to rank him because you feel bad, because that's how bad it is with Biden and his cognitive decline. But either way, guys, that's just the update when it comes to this. Really, the Democrats, they've got no real leader. You would think that Trump at this point would have a 55-60% approval rating pretty easily, or almost around there. I understand there's some problems with Russia, Ukraine, and, you know, they're saying it's escalating even more. maybe that'll kickstart some type of peace negotiation. I don't know. It seems like that's going in the opposite direction. But either way, guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.